Hi everyone, it's Sam with the Time for Science. Today's virtual science lesson is going to be all about leaves. We're well into spring now here in eastern North Carolina. All of the plants have leafed out, and we're going to talk a little bit about exactly what it is that leaves do for plants, and then we're going to look at some common plants here in eastern North Carolina and maybe learn how to identify them based on their leaves. Plants are very special. Plants are what we call producers because they produce their own food using sunlight. We are consumers. We consume plants, and sometimes we consume other consumers, like animals. Sometimes we might even consume decomposers, like mushrooms. Plants make their food using a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is when plants use water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide in order to generate sugar, which they use as their energy source, as their food. The byproduct of photosynthesis is sugar and oxygen, which we breathe in. So plants create the oxygen that we breathe just by making their own food. Isn't that pretty neat? Chlorophyll is the compound that makes plants green. Chlorophyll is really important in the photosynthesis process. When you're making some observations and looking at the leaves around your house or maybe out on a walk, you'll notice that leaves come in all different shapes and sizes and even different colors, different shades of green depending on the type of plant. We're going to use our eyes to make those observations about plants to help us identify different types of plants. What do you notice about this leaf? I notice that the leaf is in one piece, which means it's a simple leaf. I also notice that the leaf has serrated or jagged edges. I notice the veins growing here in the leaf. I also notice that it has a red stem. If I look at the underside of the leaf, it's a lighter color, and I can see what looks like 3 or maybe 5 points here on this leaf. What do you notice about this leaf? I notice that this leaf is very long. It still just has one part. It's still a simple leaf. I notice that the edges look almost smooth, but not quite when I look a little bit closer. I notice that this leaf has one main long vein traveling down the center. If I look at the underside, I see a really interesting texture on this leaf. Does this leaf remind you of anything you've ever seen before? Now you'll notice that I am touching some of the leaves that I see today. It's important when you go out and you're observing to only touch leaves that you can identify or that you know are safe to touch, because there are some plant leaves that produce some compounds that could irritate your skin or cause a rash. Can anyone think of a plant that you would not want to touch? That's right, poison ivy. Poison ivy is a plant that has a compound that causes irritation in most humans. Poison ivy has 3 leaves with a red dot in the center. The outer leaf usually has some jagged edges like you see here. And a lot of times poison ivy will have a little bit of a shine to it. That's the oils that you want to look out for. There are some other plants that can cause irritation like poison oak and poison sumac, so be sure to look out for those as well. This leaf grows on a tree and it looks kind of similar to the first leaf we looked at. It is a simple leaf. Everything's all connected here. It has 5 points, kind of like a star. I notice that the edges are a little bit serrated, and I see those veins going out into those 5 points. Here's another leaf look-alike. This plant might remind you of poison ivy. It does have a red dot in the center, but this is actually Virginia creeper. This plant does not produce the same sort of oils that poison ivy does, so it does not irritate your skin in the same way. It has 5 leaves instead of 3, so that's a good way to tell the difference between Virginia creeper and poison ivy. Virginia creeper is a great example of a compound leaf because this individual part is not a leaf by itself, but all 5 parts together make up one leaf of the Virginia creeper. Here's another example of a simple leaf. This leaf also grows on a tree. What do you notice about this leaf? I notice that it has kind of an oblong shape, and it's kind of shiny. I wonder what this leaf might be. This is the leaf of a plant that you'll often see growing out in your yard or in parks. It has sort of a heart shape. The first leaf that we looked at together was the leaf of a red maple tree. Notice those points, the jagged edges, and look at the veins, as well as the red stem. Red maple. The second leaf we observed today is called dock. This is a plant you'll often see growing on the side of the road or in yards. A lot of people would refer to this plant as a weed. The leaf with 5 points and slightly serrated edges is the leaf of a sweet gum tree. You'll also see lots of gum balls at the bottom of sweet gum trees, which can be another key identifier. The compound leaf we viewed that reminds me of poison ivy because of that red dot in the middle and because it grows like a vine is called Virginia creeper. Notice it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves. So that's how we can tell it apart from poison ivy. Another tree leaf we looked at today is that of the water oak. This leaf has a very different texture, meaning it feels different than some of the other leaves we were looking at today. It also has an oblong shape and a smooth border or margin. This beautiful heart-shaped leaf we looked at is that of the violet. The violets make purple flowers that you've probably seen blooming in your yard recently. We're going to do a simple activity with some of the leaves that we found today. All you'll need for this activity are some little squares of paper, scissors to cut those up, tape, crayons, and then a few leaves that you've gathered. Now this activity is just making prints of the leaves that you find. So you'll notice on the back of the leaves, you can see veins. These veins are what moves some of the sugars that are made in the leaves down through the stem and to the rest of the plant. Water is also moved down from the roots and up to the leaves through these veins. In order to make a print of the leaf, you take the leaf and your piece of paper and you want to tape it so that the vein side is down on the paper. Once you have your leaf taped down, the next step is to turn it over upside down and grab a crayon. You want to make sure you're doing this on a nice flat surface so that the ridges you get come from the leaf and not wood or some other material underneath. Then you just take your crayon and scribble all over the page. It works best if you use an even pressure. Don't push down too hard in one place. And just color until you start to see an image of the leaf coming through. Should look something like that. So after you're done making your leaf print, you can peel the leaf off the back, and then you still have the imprint there left, which you can use to study the leaf a little bit more closely. One of my favorite things to do with leaf prints is to play games. You could make doubles of each of your prints, and then try to find a match. Maybe play a memory game where you turn them upside down, flip them over, and see if you can remember where the maple leaf was or where the Virginia creeper leaf was. Make sure that you're using your eyes to make some good observations and not touching any leaves unless you can identify and make sure it's safe to touch. It might be a good idea to have a parent with you when you're out in the yard picking leaves. Remember not to take too many leaves from one plant because that is how the plant makes food. So if you take away too many leaves from one plant, it could harm the plant itself. You can look on the ground and find leaves that have already fallen, or maybe just take one or maybe two from each plant so that you're not causing any harm when you're out there enjoying nature. Thanks for joining me today for our science lesson. We look forward to seeing you next week.